All right, so today we're going to cover the anatomy of the brain. We'll start off looking at the ventricles using a ventricle model. And so we have the lateral ventricle, right, on either side. We have the lateral ventricles here. We have the third ventricle right here. Then we have connecting the third and fourth ventricle, the cerebral aqueduct. And then the fourth ventricle right here. And I'll also show the cerebral aqueduct and fourth ventricle on the brain model as well, okay? Now, when we look at the brain, one thing I want to show on this particular brain is if we were to cut into the brain, the superficial portion, so we're going to look here, is called the cerebral cortex, and that's actually the gray matter of the brain. And then we have the white matter of the brain, so you can see that pretty clearly. So this tan stuff is the cerebral cortex, okay? And I'll show the rest of most of this here on this other brain model. So we'll look at the outside first. When we go here, we've got the two cerebral hemispheres, and it's separated by the longitudinal fissure. If we remember from the last video, I said a fissure is a deep groove, a sulcus is a shallow groove. If we look at the side here, we have what's called the central sulcus, that shallow groove sulcus, and then anterior to that, we have the precentral gyrus. A gyrus are these folds here. So this is a precentral gyrus. This is the postcentral gyrus on either side of the central sulcus. This right here coming through is the lateral sulcus, okay? And then let's do the lobes. So we've got the temporal lobe, okay? We've got the parietal lobe, frontal lobe through here, and then occipital lobe. And the textbook and the lab matter do a good job of showing that in different colors. Okay, and those lobes are associated with the parts of the skull as well. They're in the same regions. And then let's look back here. We've got the cerebellum. Okay, and we'll go this way. When we look here, we can see a portion of the midbrain right in here. If you want to zoom into it or get closer right there, you can see these are called cerebral peduncles. They're part of the midbrain. This right here is the pons, and then the medulla. Okay. Now this stalk, this white thing right here, let's go from the side, this is called the infundibulum, and then this is the pituitary gland, also known as the hypophysis. Okay. If we look in here, these two little circular structures, those are called mammillary bodies. And then we have this structure, it almost looks like an X if you look at this. And the bottom legs of the X are the optic tracts. In the center of the X is the optic chiasm or optic chiasma. And then the top legs of the X, those are the optic nerves. When we look here, we have the olfactory tract, and at the end we have the olfactory bulb. And I think that's going to take care of our structure from the outside. So we're going to go ahead and go to the inside. Okay, and we'll repeat some of the structures, but just looking at it from a different view, and then of course add to that. Okay. This right here is a gyrus, and it's called the cingulate with a C-I-N, cingulate gyrus. This right here is called the corpus callosum. This is the septum pellucidum. This is the fornix, and this is the choroid plexus, CH, choroid plexus. And then you've got the pineal gland back here, okay? And let's see what I want to show. We have the thalamus here. So let's kind of trace it out for you. We have the hypothalamus here. Trace that out. Okay. And then the pineal gland is actually part of the epithalamus, but it's tested as pineal gland. And then if we look in the center here-ish of the thalamus, you have the interthalamic adhesion, also called the intermediate mass. If we were to go straight forward or anterior to that, we end up in the foramen of Monroe or the interventricular foramen. Okay. If we come down off of the hypothalamus, there's that infundibulum, the stalk, right, that connects to the pituitary gland. If we go anterior to that, this is actually the optic chiasm. If we know the center of the X from that other view, right, that's the optic chiasm. And we go posterior to it, we have that little ball. That is the mammillary body, okay? Now, if we look at the sections of our brainstem, we have midbrain, pons, medulla, and we're gonna have parts of the midbrain so that we'll need to know. So One of them is this right here. I'm going to trace that out for you. Okay, so that whole structure is called the corpora quadrigemina. The top portion is called the superior colliculi, and the bottom is the inferior colliculi. So depending on if it's pointing to one or the other or the whole structure. Then we have the cerebral aqueduct coming down into the fourth ventricle right there. Now, the other structure that we said on the midbrain, we can see right there is that cerebral peduncle. So remember from the outside, okay, you can see it from the inside as well. And if you look here, we've got the cerebellum. Inside the cerebellum, all this, it looks like tree branches, right? It's called the arbor vitae. And I think that will cover all of our structures from the internal. If you have any questions, let me know. Stay strong. I'll see you next time.